Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of our Police Brutality podcast. My name is John Shi, and I will be the resident expert of the topic today. We will be talking about police training, and yeah, let's get started. The reason why I picked police training is because it was inspired by whether we should defund or add additional funding to the police, but I thought that training would be a better topic to talk about because we know that America has an abnormal amount of police violence and killing, especially for a wealthy democratic country. We can't compare it to like countries such as Brazil and the Philippines, which has about 3,000 police killings a year, but America has 1,000 a year. So that is very, very high, especially for a democratic country. If you guys have any questions, we can start from there.
Do you think there's consistency in police training across America?
Oh, that's a big issue. That's one of my biggest notes. There is a lack of centralization of police training or just policing in general. If you just look at we have about 500 different police agencies in California alone, and we have 18,000 in all across America, and all of them have different training methodologies. Some are more militaristic, some are less, and then some have different requirements, such as Louisiana only requires about 340 hours of training to become a police officer. That's only a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the average is about 600 in America, and that's about 6 months. That's less than what you need for a college education.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a concern. Yeah, there's no centralization at all. There's no like national standard. Well, there is for hours, which is around 660, but that's about it. Yeah.
And what type of training do they receive during the academy, the police academy?
In the academy they do firearms training, a lot of tactics stuff, obviously about the law and state law and federal law and a bunch of other stuff. It's all good, but I do think we are missing some kind of training, which we can talk about later. Yeah, I don't think we need more and we need better training. That's my proposals.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, because and in order to do that, we need funding. So that's where the police funding kind of came from. But yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think they're, in my opinion, I mean, they mean well. I think it's the time that's an issue. I mean, you're trying to condense a lot of training into, you said 6 months.
right. Hmm.
And, I mean, they come across people with mental illness. They come across people that have psychiatric emergencies, and
Yep.
I don't think they have the right training to deal with those type of people that they come across, and that's when a situation can escalate so fast. And
Mm.
I mean, they're human too. I see how something can make them feel nervous for their life, stress for their life.
Right.
So you can argue it both ways, but I definitely think that 6 months is not enough time to train a police officer.
Yeah, there is no way. There's also a term that people use in the police force, the 40-hour expert. You only need 40 hours of class time, which is a week, 40 hours of class time to become a quote unquote expert in a particular area. So if they specialize in like say explosives for whatever reason, um, you only need 40 hours and then now you are certified to be an expert. Is 40 hours ever enough for like a training? Because I wouldn't trust like a 40-hour training with my
I don't
life.
even think basic, like I don't even think basic like first aid or what is it
CPR.
like CPR trainings are that short.
Yeah, it's not enough. Definitely not enough. And I think we need to be more careful with how we choose our training.
It also doesn't sound like they get any training at all regarding um, like de-escalation tactics.
Right.
Like it all sounds more combat or um, more like violence focused.
More violence focus. Yeah. Yeah. There were a couple reports that said that on average, most police academies do
more firearms training than de-escalation training, which is, can be seen on the field. People are more likely to shoot rather than focus on de-escalation. And that should be what I think police officers should be focused on, but not the military. And SWAT is a completely different department.
Yeah, there's definitely people. I feel like they try to make the training as similar as they could to military, which isn't something they should be doing because the military and SWAT team and police, they all are supposed to function on different in different situations.
Right.
So one training or styling police training after military training is not the way to go.
Yeah, that is definitely not. Yeah.
I agree. Police officer, law enforcement is supposed to be a public service. It's supposed to be there to serve their community and not work against it or not have to feel like attacked by the community every time. I feel like in the academy, they teach them a lot to have the mentality of any call that you go on, your life is a threat. And I mean, if you constantly have that in the back of your mind, I see the possibility of any situation, be it small or big, escalating to something that it doesn't have to be when you have that mentality of my life is always on the line.
Right. Yeah.
I also feel like I've heard stories from like 911 operators where they'll be on the phone with the person who called and then the police get there and everything the 911 operator has done to like calm the person down, the police undo like on the with the operator still on the phone being able to hear.
So what you're saying is the 911 operator is trying to calm the victim down, but then the police officers that come, they're very rough.
Yeah, they show up and then they're rough, and every calming de-escalation tactic the 911 operator has done to help the victim or the person on the call feel less anxious, the police officers ruined by how aggressive they are.
Yeah, that is definitely an issue.
Yeah, and I think that comes with like not enough training with like mental health or things like that police officers are asked to do too much. In my opinion, like they have to handle like mental health crisis, homelessness, like murder, parking violations, a bunch of things, and they don't have enough time to do all that training. And I just personally think it's too much training for them. Like they're handling too much. So I feel like instead of giving them a longer training, I think it should just be distributed, like the different roles in different categories of a police officer, like different police officers made to handle different things.
So there should be different like subsections and like different groups of police officers. I mean, I still think that they should have to at least take classes and go to training for at least a year. Like I feel like the training definitely needs to be longer.
Right.
Because even if they feel like firearms is like such a big deal and they don't want to take away time from like firearms or like combat lessons, then they definitely need to dedicate that same amount of time to de-escalation tactics. And if that means that they have to double the training time, then that means that they have to double the training time.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't, I feel like you shouldn't be able to become a police officer faster than someone can get a degree from a community college.
You can become a barber. It takes a lot longer to become a barber than a police officer.
I think it takes like 1,000 hours to become a hairstylist. Or
it was 1,300. Yeah, 1,300 hours to become a hairstylist. And then you're trusting people with your life that have only trained 6 months, 600 hours. I don't think that's very conducive to safety at all. I think another issue as well is the lack of training after the academy.
They only go to class once and then they never take classes again.
Yeah,
unless they get in trouble.
Yeah, they're required to have additional training 24 hours every 2 years. That's nuts.
Yeah, they should
Honestly,
definitely
that
have
is
to take
nuts.
they should have to take like a refresher course.
I
If
agree.
not, every 6 months.
Or retest every couple of years, I think.
Yeah, retest every couple of years.
Yeah, because there's some laws will change over the course of the years, and depending on what's going on, especially locally, statewide, there's always going to be some changes. So you should always be retesting to see if the officers are fit to be, to be ready.
I also feel like part of the issue is that like the people who police officers are not like policing their own communities, like the communities that they grew up in or that they live in. They work in a completely different community, so they aren't familiar with the area like at all, like they would be like their own neighborhood.
Oh,
And
so you, sorry, go ahead.
I feel like it's easier to not see like the people that they're supposed to be working to like help protect. It's easier to not see them as to be disconnected from them.
Okay.
I feel like having police within their community would help. Bias confirmation. I feel like when you take a person out of their community and put them into another community, they're automatically looking for things to confirm what they already believe in, which already raises a flag. It already puts a stigma on a person that shouldn't be there in the first place. You're supposed to be neutral going into a situation. And yeah, I agree, Gabby. If you were to put police officers in the community and which they grew up in, I think that they'd have a little bit more, at least empathy, at the very least, for the people that they're possibly pulling over or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
And then I also feel like even just on the basic level, knowing a place is better than not knowing a place. So I would think in like times of emergency, if a police officer needed to get somewhere really fast, like to a neighborhood, knowing the streets better and not relying on a GPS would be way more helpful getting there in a timely manner than having to rely on a GPS.
It's also less stressful, I'd imagine. You're in a familiar area, you know the people. So there's less stress when you're dealing with emergencies.
Yeah, because sorry, not to interrupt you, but
okay.
because then you'd be familiar with like side streets, you'd be familiar with like I'm just thinking about how one time I took an Uber. I don't know if you know the Atlantic Square area, but when the Atlantic Square shopping center turns into the neighborhood, there's a couple of streets where on a map it says that you can cross, but in person there's like these little cement blockers so that cars can't pass through the street there. And so on like a GPS, you'd think that you can cross through that street, and in reality you can't. Like there's no way you can get through there's no way you can get through there. So having knowledge of that, I feel like they wouldn't think, oh, this is a shortcut, I can get to this place faster. When in reality, if they knew the area better, they would know that's not a shortcut.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the amount of stress that police officers have to deal with, and how do you think it like affects their performance on the field?
I definitely think that they're always working on high stress environments. I mean, maybe not always. I'm not sure, like the nature of I guess it depends on the nature of the call. But I would definitely consider law enforcement to be a high stress environment type of occupation. And I think that's something that they have to incorporate into their training. I feel like the academy, for any academy, be it a police academy, a firefighter academy, everything's very simulated, and obviously you don't know what it's like once everything's not in your control and you can't account for everything. But I feel like that's something that they should definitely be brushing up on at the very least once a year, learning how to work, how to de-escalate, or not even de-escalate, but how to function efficiently in high stress environments and not have to. I mean, the first thing go for is their gun to feel safe, or I don't know. I just feel like their threshold for killing is pretty low compared to everybody else.
They need to learn more like effective coping measures or like stress prevention,
Right.
stress cope, like ways to cope. That way they aren't so like I guess you would call it like trigger happy, or even just like taser, like they don't default to pulling out a weapon.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the articles that I used for the assignments, it was saying that most officers who end up shooting first are the ones that are inexperienced, and it's because they get tunnel vision. You know, you get so stressed. You know how like when you have like when you have to go speak in front of everyone, or you know you do something that's really you're really stressed out and you're really nervous, you shut everything out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see anything. So then when you see police officers when they're so afraid for their life, which is that's totally normal. That's totally like acceptable. But they become so focused on like, is that thing a gun? They just become so scared. So because our reflexes and our natural tendency to react to danger, they just immediately assume it's a gun and boom, you shoot, just to protect yourself. And I think we need to do more training to simulate these kind of like high intensity situations, so then the officers can then be able to relax more under these circumstances and be able to clearly see what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Oh well, I was gonna say that I know that there's I think they call it like ride-alongs when I think you have to be either 17 or 18 to do a ride-along with a officer, and it's basically where you just sit in like the passenger seat and you tag along with an officer on duty to get a feel for like what a day on the job is. But I don't think that's something that's like mandatory. I feel like if you're training to be or you think you want to go into the police force, that having like a system kind of where or like making going along on these ride-alongs with officers while they're doing like their job, and not just and not allowing I mean obviously I wouldn't say take a person not trained to like a high stakes situation, but like maybe don't just take them on like, oh, we're giving out parking tickets all day,
right?
To help them get like an idea for what the job is. Because another thing I feel is that sometimes I feel like people might think that they'll be fine doing work like that, and then they don't realize like how stressful it might feel, and like they feel trapped in the job, or like they might feel trapped. Well, I already started this, I have to finish it.
Right.
And they just like don't know. They don't form the proper like coping mechanisms that they need to, stress management mechanisms.
Yeah, I think we definitely need like a psychological evaluation during while throughout their careers, because they only get one psych test before they enter the police academy, and that's it. So, like you said, Gabrielle, like anyone can be like, "Oh, I'm fit. I'm ready to be part of the police force." But then, once you experience something really traumatic, people change. Or like after long periods of, high stress. Like if you take a soldier, for example, after they come back from a tour, they're never the same, really. So, I think we should have like psych evaluations annually.
I also think that probably having like counseling services,
right. I think
would
they
be
do.
really helpful. I'm sure they do, but I'm sure they're not mandatory.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're definitely not mandatory, and it's probably looked down upon. Because it's because how mental health is still like
stigmatized.
Still stigmatized, and especially in the police force, at least for men, you have to be like tough and all of that. So like just by going to those, you're now ostracized from the rest of your department. Nobody wants that, and so then that's another obstacle to counseling. Do you want to know the requirements to becoming a police officer, at least in California?
Yeah. Are there different requirements? Like, since I'm assuming all of us live in like the LA area.
I'm in San Jose.
Okay.
I have not moved down yet.
Okay, so you're in San Jose. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, if LA and San Jose are different, do you know that? If the Los Angeles requirements are different?
I know the hours required are different. LA actually has they have a decent amount. I'm pretty sure, yeah, here. They have about 830 hours of training, which is pretty good. It's higher than the average. San Jose is a little bit less. I think it's about 700. I'll have to go take a look. But
do you know if that's based on department size or why those hours different? Like how come they can't make that the same across police departments?
that was the decentralization I was talking about. All the police agencies, they're all independent of one another.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as long as I think you have to just hit certain requirements that the federal government stated. As long as you hit those, it's okay. But there's so many different variations between like requirements to pass the police academy that's kind of ridiculous. There's no like here's the amount of training we need to get here, and here, like, say there's no everybody needs to get 100 hours of de-escalation training. There's none of that. It's just like you guys decide whether this is enough for your county or for your area.
I think that's where everything begins to crumble because there's
right.
there's no consistency across it. And I mean, you're in San Jose, we're in LA. Well, at least I'm in LA. I can't speak for the rest, but I mean, what guarantees that if I go to San Jose for the weekend or something, that the treatment that I get over there, or even across town here in Orange County, that I'll get different treatment from police officers as opposed to LA County or just other counties in general, if it's not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know I'm gonna be respected in one county and not the other? How do I know that police officer isn't gonna try to manipulate me into giving up my rights so he can have the upper hand in the situation? That's as a citizen, that would make me concerned.
It is very concerning. Yeah, if we look at like a bunch of other countries, so we like Canada. Canada has a very centralized police force. They only have only a couple police like agencies, and they all answer to one another. So it definitely helps. They're more unified, and their training is much more structured than ours.
That's the word that I was looking for. Unified. Yeah.
And I think I have the statistics here. Yeah. Canada only has had 36 police killings in 2019. We've had 1,004.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we have 10 times, not 10 times. They have 1/10 our population, but still, that is stupid high. That is not, way too high.
What other requirements are needed to even apply to become a police officer?
So general requirements, these are pretty universal. 18 or 21, depending on the state, or older. There's a written exam you have to pass, a physical test. I don't know how standardized these exams are, though. I don't think they are. I think each department gets to choose what's in it.
Okay.
So let's say like LA's police department may require, maybe have a more strenuous physical test than San Jose or something like that. There's a drug alcohol test. There's a background check. You have to have a high school diploma at least, or a GED, and there's going to be one psych eval, and that's it. That's all you need.
Sounds pretty minimal.
And literally anyone can be one. You can even have past drug use, and as long as you pass everything else, you should be okay.
When you say psych, there's a psych eval, it doesn't even sound like there's like a required what is it called? A required racial profiling, like a test to make sure that you don't have any like racist biases. I know that it obviously doesn't sound like it's standardized across everywhere, but I wonder how many departments even make that a requirement.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are required. I just think the way it's tested, those are different. And because it's tested differently, then we have different effectiveness of how they're measured, if that makes sense. They do test on like personal bias, but if you have an officer who has bias and is giving the testing, like, what do you think is going to happen there? Yeah.
It's
So
already
the whole thing's already done. So I think the testers need to be like carefully evaluated themselves before giving the test, or you have a third party, which we can talk about in the accountability podcast.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like having like an impartial third party of like people not in the police force. So I would say like psychologists or stuff like that administering those types of tests.
Yeah, for sure.
That would definitely be more helpful.
Yeah. One argument that people say that the 600 hours in the police academy is enough is they do spend most police academies or police agencies, they do have the new recruits. They have them do they pair them with a more experienced officer. I think they call it probation for at least a year or so for them to learn on the job. But I'm not entirely sure how effective that can be.
I think that can go both ways depending on who your mentor is. I mean, if you have someone already that has racial bias, that's aggressive, that's used to being trigger happy, or just used to escalating situations, they're gonna create a younger police officer to follow in his or her footsteps. And yeah, the problem starts at the top, and somehow, some way, we got to figure out how to build a new foundation and work up from there.
Yeah, I think we just need to centralize policing in general, but at least for the training protocols, it should be every state should do the same thing, and then you can add additional training depending on your like the environment. Say if there's a higher let's say a higher crime rate, then obviously you need a little bit more firearms training and like other training that pertains to that situation. But everyone should have a minimum, and the testing should all be the same. It shouldn't be different.
And how about like training when it comes to documenting incidents and stuff like that? Is that touched upon in the academy, or is that something that's taught outside? And because I mean, I think that has a lot to do with why police officers feel like they can get away with so much, mostly because of that. I believe it's called qualified immunity. They feel like they're always protected. So I don't know, how does like body worn cameras, how do we know that they're always going to turn them on? Or
there's already incidents where they turn them off.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah, they turn them off on purpose.
Or they block them on purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like the rules and punishments for even for having your cameras turned off or having your documents filled out, like if the documents are filled out incorrectly or with lies, I feel like there definitely should be like harsher punishments. Like it shouldn't just be like a little, oh, don't do that. I feel like even if your body cam turns off, on accident, you need to be like punished harshly, even if it's an accident, because then how else are people going to get the memo of like, if I turn it off on purpose, then I'll lose my job.
Right.
Yeah, I
think
think there's
Go
not
ahead.
enough regulation, and that can come from both like police departments and the district attorney, because they're not being as hard on the police officers as they should be. They're being a lot more lenient and not punishing police officers.
Yeah. Oh, right. So the training won't do anything. It's the culture of that particular department or agency.
Right. And that's hard to break down.
Yeah, you have to like you basically have to restart everything. Because the problem is like 90% of the cops are good cops. We know that.
Yes.
It's that 10% that screws everything up. And those are the people, but nobody will report them. That's the issue. And actually, no, they do. That's the problem. They do report most of them, but the chiefs or whoever is in charge of the people, they don't. Almost no action is taken because it's not worth it. I mean, police officers are already getting paid not that much, average about 60,000 a year, and now now because media, everybody hates the police. Who wants to become a police officer now? So you can't afford to fire these officers.
I don't know. I feel like there was a culture at my I wouldn't say like just at my high school, but I feel like there was a culture amongst like the boys who were in sports where they would be like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do. I'll probably just become a cop or something.
Oh, that's a great point.
So I feel like there's always gonna be like those people who are just like, oh yeah, I'll be a cop. I'm already in shape. I can probably pass the test.
Yeah, I think that also has to do a lot with people that like to have power. I think you're never not gonna have people wanting to be police officers. There's always gonna want you're always gonna have people that want to have power or have the upper hand. And law enforcement is one of the top jobs in which you can do that.
Mm.
I think, I mean, you guys are talking about a culture, and I feel like something that would help is educating the public, because like I said earlier, it's a public service, but I feel like law enforcement doesn't really get out and tell the public about their rights and how to exercise them and when they're being violated. And I think that's something important if law enforcement is truly trying to be transparent in everything that they do, is educate the public why they go about the things that they do, such as crowd control when it comes to protests. Or because like you said, 90% of them are good cops and they're tainted by the other 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it sucks, but in every profession you're gonna have people that are good and people that are bad. It's a human thing. And the way I feel that they can try accounting for it is if they involve the public, the community that they're supposedly serving, and telling them, okay, this is why we're dispersing a crowd at a protest. It could be for your safety because a car could come plowing in through here and, possibly hurt many people. And this is why we need you guys off the streets, instead of just coming in with tear gas or whatever the situation may be. I believe transparency is something that they lack.
And that is it for our first episode. Thank you for listening in to our police brutality podcast. Next week, we will be discussing the topic of police accountability and what we can do to hold our officers to a higher standard. See you next time.